Hi everyone, I'm Jeff Lawton. I'm going to look at a game from an incredible marathon bullet match which was played this week between Carlsen and Firouzja. The final score, it was impressively won by Firouzja by a score of 103.5 to 90.5. That's right, that was 194 games, 1 minute chess, and it lasted almost 5 hours. It was an incredible thing to watch, and we're very lucky we've got top players that do this for our entertainment, especially the world champion to do this. But historically, when you go back years, people like Botvinnik used to say this was simply not good for your chess to play, so much quick chess, even like 5 minute blitz. But clearly Magnus disagrees, and it doesn't do him any harm at all. So in this particular game was game 118. And so we've got Alireza, Firouzja is white, 27-28, and his classical ranking is 21. And of course, Magnus is world champion, and his current rating is 2863. So Alireza opened d4, knight f6, c4, c5 from Carlsen, d5. b5, the Benko Gambit, which Carlsen played quite a few times throughout the match. cb5, a6, and b6, declining the gambit. It's got queen b6, e4, because this was all being blitzed out. I think Magnus and Alireza both didn't notice knight e4 is possible here. So then we had d6. Knight c3, g6, and knight f3. So this is the main line in the b6 declined Benko. Bishop g7 and knight d2, which is a standard move, often in queen pawn openings. The knight heads for this square on c4. We had castles for black, bishop e2, knight d7, knight bd7. This is still the main theory. And castles for white. So I should just say these clock times here, they've been done so they update more or less every 5 moves, and then towards the end of the game they'll update for each and every move. So then we had a5, which is slightly unusual. The main line goes queen c7. Then we had knight c4, queen to b8, and now a4, sort of giving himself the strong b5 square. We had bishop to a6, and now f3. So I think that possibly is the first new move. I mean, the whole line particular position hasn't been played that often that we've reached, and the 2 moves that were played previously were queen here, and what was the other one? The other one was knight a3. So we had knight e8, king h1. It's just a useful move, putting the king out of the way of any checks or things on the diagonal. And knight e5, and now knight to a3. Now we had knight c7, so positions looking approximately equal, and knight to b5. Then we had bishop b5. So this is where the advantage switches to definitely in white's favour. And perhaps a stronger move is c4 first, and now if f4, then knight d3. We can play takes, queen takes, and bishop c3. And this is a more favourable way to regain the pawn. Because in the game we'll see the difference after bishop b5, a b5, and now c4. We had f4, knight d3, otherwise the bishop would take on c4, bishop d3, cd3. So now on, you can see here Alireza's now, this is move 20, after black's 20th move, and Alireza's about 7 seconds up on the clock, which was fair to say, fairly typical throughout the match that he tended to keep around 5 to 10 seconds ahead throughout the games. Then we had Queen D3, and then A4, and now Bishop E3. So I'll just give an idea of what sort of thing, in case you don't know much about the Benko, the sort of thing Black hopes for if, say, White played this move, Rook A4. We can play Rook A4, Knight A4, and now capture the pawn. So Black's a pawn down, but he gets good compensation even in the ending. For example, after Queen B5, Knight B5, we can then play Bishop here to develop. Black can take the open file and say White contests it with Rook C1. We can take, and now F5, and this is a typical move in the Benko, and the idea is that you weaken the defender of this pawn. And because the knight's badly placed and the king isn't near the centre yet, there's nothing White can do, because the pawn's on F4, so you're not protecting it with F3. For example, after EF5, GF5, Black's going to play this next move and then take this, and Black's doing fine. But Alireza played a much stronger move, Bishop here. Now there's a threat to keep his pawn with B6, which is a lot different to the line that we just looked at. So Magnus has to play Bishop C3, BC3, Queen B5. So he's had to give up his bishop in order to regain the pawn. And this is different to the other line where he could have gone C4 earlier. And now we had C4, Queen D7, and now Bishop D4, which is a very strong move. The bishop's on this very strong diagonal now that Black's lost his defending his dark squared bishop, and it gives White great attacking chances now. And also the knight is not happy here because it's not able to get to a good square from C7. So we had Rook FB8 playing on the queen side, which is what Black usually does in the Benko. And now the very strong reply, F5, very natural move, opening up the king's side. Then we had Rook to B3. If Black tries to close the position with G5, then H4 is very difficult to meet. Further opens the position up. For example, if GH4, we can play Queen D2, threatening to swing the queen over, and as you can see, obviously Black's king is wide open. And after F6, Rook F4, the rook can join in as well. For example, if Black tries to get out the way, then Rook H4, Rook H8. It's too passive for Black, but Queen H6. Rook G8, just trying to bolster the defence, but then Queen H5, King F8, and now simply Bishop E3, and Bishop H6 is very strong because there's no more escape squares for the Black king. So G5 doesn't help. So we had Rook B3, now Queen D2, and the Queen's ready to come to H6. There's no real way for Black to meet this. So we had Knight E8, FG6, and now FG6. So if HG6, straight away White can just win a pawn, threatening mate, which you can't play Knight F6 because if Rook takes, pawn takes, Bishop takes, and there's mate on G7 or H8. So you'd have to play F6, and then White can safely win a pawn with and also the knight's on a bad square here after Knight G7. So Magnus played FG6, and then the very natural move E5. It's one thing about Alireza's play; it's sort of very concrete, and he plays very natural moves, and it's really very impressive to watch how he plays the moves so quickly. So at this point, he's now about 10 seconds ahead, and the position is very much in his favour due to the Black king, which doesn't have many defenders around it. And all the time he's opening up the position for the bishop. The more open the position gets, the more it favours the bishop against the knight. So we had D takes E5, bishop takes E5, And now Carlsen played Queen G4. It's a good active move to try and distract White from his attack. If you play Knight D6, it just straight away runs into immediate loss with Queen H6 threatening mate. And while E6 won't help you at all because you just play DE6 and that's winning. And if you play Knight F5 of cut to defend the G7 square, of course we can just capture that. And you're unable to regain the piece due to checkmate. So we had Queen G4. And now Firouzja found the strongest move. It took him 4 seconds, was the move D6. And now Carlsen played, well, he played the best chance. He played Queen E6. If you do a move like, the problem is that White's threatening Queen D5 check. You can't block it with E6 to stop the check because, well, among many things, really, I mean, Queen F2 would be very, very strong here, but also simply D7, and there's no answer to that. And if you play something like Rook D8, and DE7 wins straight away, and after Rook D2, we've got checkmate. So Magnus found the best defensive try, Queen E6, and then the sort of very natural move, bringing in the Rook again. It's a typical Firouzja move, I might say. He just keeps playing very natural moves and very powerful moves. So we had Knight D6. And again, he could play here straight away, Queen H6, which would be decisive. Because after Knight F5, we can just take that, removing the defender of the G7 square. And of course, Knight E8 to defend just runs into Queen F8, for example. But he played an equally strong move, Bishop A1. And we had Queen C4. Nothing better for Black to do. Then we had Queen to H6, threatening Queen G7 mate. There's no way for Black to block the long diagonal. This sort of, I mean, it's a beautiful position for White. All his pieces are in the direction of the White King and of the Black King, sorry. And there's nothing that Black can do, because if you block with E5, of course, we can simply take it. And now we're attacking the knight and still threatening mate. There's no answer to that for Black. So Carlsen played Rook C3. Then we had Bishop C3, so Magnus was down to 8 seconds. He took 10 seconds on Rook C3, realizing at that point that the position was lost. Queen C3, and now Rook E7. And this was where Carlsen resigned the position. There's a threat of Queen H7 mate. So the only way to prevent that would be to play Queen H8, but then White can simply play Queen D2, attacking the knight, and also threatening Queen to D5 check. And there's simply no answer to that. So Rook D8, we can play Queen D5, Knight F7 is forced, and Queen takes F7 mate. So it was a really impressive game by Firouzja, beating the Benko Gambit with very direct play. And I mean, it was just a really impressive match. At one point in the match, he was incredibly about 20, I think he reached 20 odd points ahead, maybe 22 points ahead. But then at some point, Magnus won 8 games on the bounce, which was amazing. And I think it was the longest winning streak in the match itself. But I hope you enjoyed that game. And in another video, I'm going to look at some more games from the match, because although they're bullet chess, they're impressive games to watch. 2 top players playing bullet, and there's some very instructive games. So thanks for watching that. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please subscribe and like the video. Thank you. Bye now.